Hey, or hello, I'm Alistair, and this is programming. So, real quick, for this video and the links in the description, there should be some links that I'm going to call the skip ahead feature, right? It will probably be some name on like a certain section in the video, and if you click on that, it should bring you to a certain part of the video. So you can just skip around to some part that you want review on, okay? I'm going to talk about a couple of things. So let's get right into it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to write a hello world program. So I'm using REPL.it for writing Python programs, and we're using Python 3.6.1. So on the right side, the REPL, it should say Python 3.6.1. But this is just a nice way of writing Python programs without actually having to install Python. So we're going to enter in the word print, followed by the open and close parentheses, and this is called the print command. Inside of the parentheses, we're going to put two double quotes, and inside the double quotes, we're going to enter in the text, hello, comma, world. And if we then click this big big green button that says run, over on the right window should spit out the text hello world. So this is the print statement, the print command, and we're printing to the screen the text hello world. Okay, if you wanted to print out multiple values, multiple pieces of text, then you would do a comma after your value and then another value. In this case, we'll do, and I am Alistair. So if we run this, it should say hello world and I am Alistair. And that's what we see. When programming, we need to be able to manipulate some sort of data, right? So what kind of, what types of data can we manipulate? Well, we're first going to talk about what we just printed, displayed onto the screen with the Hello World program. I said it was text, and I guess you could think of it as text, but it's also known as a string, right? So a string is just basically a bunch of text between double quotes. So hello world. So this is a string, some text encapsulated in double quotes. And when I press enter in the right window, the REPL, after giving the string hello world, it just returns me back the string, right? So in a program, we usually use text to represent some textual information, right? Because in a program, there's no really other way to represent words and sentences besides strings, right? Or if maybe I wanted to get the name of a user, a real good way of storing that is as a string, and that's most likely one of the only ways to store that information. Another type of value or type that we can use is called an integer. Now, if you go back to math and you remember what an integer is, it's basically a whole number, like 2, 3, 47, and 96, right? So an integer is a whole number from negative infinity to positive infinity. And you might be thinking, okay, we have integers, like 3, 4, and 7. Then what about, decimal point numbers, like pi, 3.14159, can I represent that in Python? What kind of type is that? Well, that kind of value does exist in Python, and it's known as a floating point number because it has a decimal point and it's in a sea of digits. So we have integers, which are whole numbers, and floating point numbers, or floats, which are decimal point numbers. So, you can have pi, or you can have 2.7 with a whole bunch of digits after it, or you could have 1.5, or just 0.5. Cool. So strings are text, basically. Integers are whole numbers, and floats are floating point or decimal point numbers. In programming, we use math. No, we're not mathematicians, but we have to be able to do basic arithmetic. So we have something called mathematical operators, or arithmetic operators, right? So let's go through each one. And first I'm going to talk about only doing math with numbers. So what if we want to add two numbers? We do 2 plus 2. So use the plus sign for addition. And that should seem pretty straightforward. If I press enter on that, it gives us 4, because 2 plus 2 equals 4. If we want to subtract, like say 5 from 10, we do 10, and then the subtraction symbol, hyphen, for subtraction. So 10 minus 5 is 5. For multiplication, however, you do not use x, but you instead use the star symbol. So if I wanted to get the answer to life, universe, and everything, 6 times 7, I would do 6 star, or asterisk, or however you pronounce that, 7. So 6 star symbol 7, and that's 6 times 7. And if I run that, we get 42, or 2 times 3, which is 6. What about division? Well, we have, division's pretty standard, so let's do 15 divided by 3, and you can see that we use the backslash for division. And if I run that, you'll see that we get back 5.0. Now, this regular version, so the normal standard version of division that we just used is just standard division, but it always returns a floating point number, even if it's some even division like 5.0. And there's another kind of division that we'll talk about in just a second that just returns the result as an integer. But as you can see, if I did something like 13 divided by 2, you can see that we get 6.5 because 13 is not evenly divisible by 2. Hope that makes sense. Sometimes you also want to get just the remainder of a division, and in that case you'll use the mod or modulus operator. So in this case, let's do 13 mod 2. Now the modulus operator is the percent symbol, just so you know. So 13 mod 2 is 1, right? Because if we, what this means is the remainder is not 0. If the remainder was 0, then that means 13 is evenly divisible by 2. But we know that 13 isn't divisible, evenly at least, by 2, so it returns us 1. Hope that makes sense. Now let's do the division, the alternate division that I mentioned. So let's do 13 / 2, right? If we remember from our other example, when we tried this with regular division, it gave us 6.5, if I remember correctly. But if we run this now, we see that we only get 6. So this is known as integer or integral, I think, division. And all it does is it divides the two numbers and returns the result as an integer value. So it gets rid of the remainder. What about exponents, though? We need to be able to use exponents. Well, you would expect it to be the caret symbol, but sadly that's not true. If I wanted to do 5 to the power 2, we would see that the caret symbol does not raise it to a power. Instead, if we wanted to do exponents, we'd use 2 star symbols. So 5 to the power 2 is what I just entered. So if I run that, you can see that we get back 25, because 5 to the power 2, 5 times 5, is equal to 25. Now let's talk about using these arithmetic operators on strings. This is a string, hello, and as I mentioned, it's basically text. And we'll go more into the quirks of strings later. But you might be thinking to yourself, Alistair, can I do, like my favorite number is, and can I add that to 5? So can I add a string to a number? Yeah, like floating point number or an integer? No. You see, Python can't do that, and if you try to do that, it'll get very angry with you. Oh well. But you can add strings together. So if I have a string hello, with a space after the O, and I add that to another string that is the word world with an exclamation mark at the end, what this will do is it'll basically stitch together the two strings in the middle. So we should get the sentence, hello world. And in fact, we do. Important note though, if I was to do hello, just the word without a space afterwards, and do world with an exclamation mark, and I was to run that, you would see that now it's just one word. And that's because we had a space in the other example, and when you add two strings together, it doesn't automatically put a space between the two strings. And what we just did, stitching together these two strings, is called concatenation. All right. Are there any other arithmetic operators that we can use on strings? We saw that we could add together strings, but what else can we do? Well, you can multiply strings. So here's an example. If I do the word hello with an exclamation mark and a space afterwards, and then I multiply that by 5, what this will basically do is it'll add the string hello with a space afterwards to itself 5 times. To illustrate this, let's run it. And we get hello, 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 hello. So it's the word hello 5 times. And that's because we multiplied it, added it to itself 5 times. But you cannot multiply two strings together. That just doesn't make sense. And you'll see you'll get an error. That's all well and good. But we need a way of storing the result of some calculation, right? Because at some point, we might get input from the user, say we're making a calculator, and the user inputs the number 3 and wants to multiply it by 2, right? We need some way of saving 3 times 2, the result of that, and then later maybe printing it out to the screen. How would we do this? We would accomplish this with something called a variable. Now, if you think back to mathematics, algebra in particular, you'll remember that in algebra, a variable represents some unknown value that we're trying to solve for. Like in the case of 3x equals 15. In this case, when we're solving for x, we divide 15 by 3, and we get 5, right? In this case, if we substituted 5 for x, 5 would be the number we need to make this, so each side of the equal sign actually equal to each other, right? So in this statement right here is basically us saying what value x would have to be to make 3x equal to 15. In programming, however, when we're using variables, a variable does not represent some unknown value. Rather, we actually give it a value on purpose. So if we were to go up and do x, just the single letter x, equal to 5, what is happening here is the program is essentially making a box. And here's an illustration to help you understand. You see, Python basically, or at least you can think of it as making a new cardboard box that has a label on it. Think of it like you're moving to a new house. Usually when you put some stuff in a cardboard box, you'll put a label on it to tell you what is stored in that box. Much like that, Python will make a new cardboard box and give it the label x in this case, because that is the name of our variable. And the thing that is stored inside the cardboard box is 5, because that is the value we are assigning to x. So this right here is known as a variable assignment. It's called as a variable assignment. And what this basically means is we're specifying a value that will be stored in a variable's name, right? So later down the line, if I say print out x, and I put in the variable name x inside the parentheses, what will happen is the name x won't be printed out, but instead it will print out the value that is stored in x. So we'll get the value 5 put up onto the screen. An important thing to note, a statement is a variable assignment if you first have a variable name and then a equal sign, and after the equal sign, some value that you're going to be storing inside the variable. This will be important later on when we start talking about if statements, where the use of a single equal sign and two equal signs really matter. So let's try making some variables real quick. Now you might be thinking to yourself, can I use anything as a variable name, like my first variable? Can I have that be equal to 42? Where my first and the word variable are separated by spaces? No. You can't have spaces in your variable name, sadly. If you wanted, however, to have something akin to that, you would have to separate it by underscores. So something like my underscore first underscore variable. And you can set that to 42. And this is a valid variable name. Now if I enter my underscore first underscore variable, if I just enter in the name and I press enter, it will tell us that the value currently stored in that variable is 42. Now you might be thinking, what exactly are the rules for variable naming? Well, the name of your variable has to start with either a letter, like A through Z or capital A through Z, or an underscore. So, for example, I could have a variable name that is underscore hello, and this would be a valid variable name. So if I ask what value is stored in hello or underscore hello, you'll see that it's 5. Cool. Can you have numbers in your variable name? Yes, but it has to be after the first letter or underscore. Because if I had a variable name called 9a and I tried to set that to 5, Python will throw an error at me and be very angry. The problem here in this example is that when Python sees the digit 9, it might confuse it for some number 9 and not actually a variable name. So if you wanted to have the letter A and the digit 9 as a variable name, you would have to have it be A followed by the 9. So again, the first position, the first character of your variable name has to either be some lowercase or capitalized letter or an underscore. Another thing to note, variable names are case sensitive, also much like other keywords in Python. So the capital P print command is something completely different than lowercase print. It'll actually recognize lowercase print as a command, while if you did capital P print, it will be very confused and won't know what the heck you're referring to. So real quick, let's do some examples, because repetition and practice is what really helps you learn programming. So let's do a really simple one. Let's make a story. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a variable called name, and inside of it is going to be stored a string, which will be the name of some character. Let's say Jim. Now in this story, we're going to print out some lines of the story and just substitute the name of the character. And in this story, it's going to be very short, and it's going to talk about how Jim went to the grocery store, or whomever went to the grocery store, bought a thing of milk, and went home and had lunch. Okay, So here's the program that I entered in. So in it, it'll print out on the first line, line 3, it prints out the name and then says, so name went to the store today. Then it says, while the person's name was at the store, the person bought milk. After buying milk, the person went home and had lunch. And this variable name, every place that you see the variable name called name, we will replace for the actual name of our character, in this case, Jim. So if I run this, you'll see on the right, it outputs, Jim went to the store today. While Jim was at the store, Jim bought milk. After buying milk, Jim went home and had lunch. Cool. Try making your own story, or better yet, try changing the name to, say, Mary, or something else. If I change the name variable to the string Mary, it says effectively the same thing, but the name of the person is completely different. Say in some universe, if a person was really annoying, you would basically say their name over and over again as their new name based on how annoying they were. So say I had a buddy named Hamlet. Say Hamlet is really annoying. He's like 20 times more annoying than any normal person. Then let's make a program to illustrate how annoying he is. So first we're going to put out to the screen my annoying friend is named, and then the name of the person. And then we'll say, if they were 20 times more annoying, then their name would be, and then we'll have a colon, and on the next line we'll print out the string, the name, multiplied by 20. So if you run this, you'll see that it puts out, my annoying friend is named Hamlet. If they were 20 times more annoying, their name would be Hamlet, 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 Hamlet. You know, it's the word Hamlet 20 times over. You can also change this so that the name of the person outputted is completely different. Say the name of the person is Joe. And if I run that, my annoying friend is named Joe. If they are 20 times annoying, more annoying rather, their name would be Joe, 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 Joe. You get my point. Cool beans. How about this? Let's write a program where we first make a variable n, and we're trying to do some complicated math, okay? First, what we're going to do is we're going to assign the value 3 to n. Then, we're going to reassign, as in change the value stored in n. We're going to say n is going to be equal to the value previously stored in n multiplied by 3, and then it'll add 1. And then, we'll print out to the screen, the result is a comma and then n. So what we should get is we should get 10, because 3 times 3 plus 1 is equal to 10, because 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 plus 1 is 10. So remember, so I'm going to run this and we'll talk about it. The result is 10. Cool. So when we first declare this variable m, we set the value stored in it to 3. Then later, we change the value stored in n to the value previously stored in n, 3, multiplied by 3, and then added 1 to the end of it, which means that we get 10. And that's why it says that the result is 10. So what I want you to do is play around with Python, get some experience and practice with it, have fun. The real only way to seriously learn a programming language is to play with it on your own time. I'll leave a link in the description to REPL.it as well as a link to where to download Python if you have your own laptop and you want to just download it. Hope you have a good time, and don't forget to reboot your computer. Bye.